In the marble halls of American power, there are confrontations, and then there are demolitions. What was about to unfold in the ornate hearing room of the House Intelligence Committee was the latter, a meticulously planned political execution that would backfire with the force of a tactical detonation. The room itself, a space that had witnessed decades of carefully managed political theater, crackled with an unusual and venomous tension. On the surface, it was a routine oversight meeting on intelligence community reforms. In reality, it was an ambush, and Chairman Adam Schiff was the hunter. His finger, trembling not with weakness but with manufactured indignation, stabbed the air in the direction of the witness. "You are Putin's puppet, Assad's mouthpiece, and a disgrace to this Congress." The CNN cameras, pre-positioned for the kill shot, zoomed in on Schiff's face, ready to capture another brave takedown for the evening news cycle. His staff had been coordinating this moment for weeks, leaking exclusives to their allies at MSNBC and ensuring the New York Times had a reporter on standby with a pre-written story lauding Schiff's courageous stand against the un-American elements within their own government. They had no idea they were not filming a coronation, but an abdication. They were filming the last day of Adam Schiff's uncontested power. At the witness table, Tulsi Gabbard sat with a stillness that was almost unnerving. Her hands were folded calmly on the table before her, her posture a testament to a discipline forged far from the performative battlefields of Washington. As a former Army National Guard officer who had served in the inferno of Iraq, who had seen medical units take enemy fire, the theatrical tantrum of a pompous congressman was less than intimidating. It was, in fact, predictable. One could almost hear the echo of a drill sergeant's advice from years ago. Let them exhaust themselves with their own fury. Then, when they are spent and gasping for air, you strike. Schiff, oblivious, pressed his attack, his voice rising in a carefully rehearsed crescendo to reach the gallery packed with his supporters, young, enthusiastic staffers from progressive organizations, hand-picked to provide the validating applause track. For too long, he boomed, this committee has tolerated those who would excuse dictators, who would parrot Kremlin talking points, who would put America last. It was a masterclass in political demagoguery, a performance aimed squarely at the cameras, an actor reaching for his Oscar. Representative Gabbard, he sneered, your trip to Syria, your meetings with Assad, your refusal to call him a war criminal, these are not the actions of an American patriot. The gallery erupted in perfectly orchestrated applause. But on the dais, something was wrong. The veteran Democratic members of the committee, the ones who understood the true flow of power, were not celebrating. Senator Mark Warner was studying his phone with an intensity usually reserved for national security alerts. Representative Jackie Speer had suddenly found a passage in her briefing papers that required her absolute concentration. Even Jim Himes, Schiff's reliable ally, was studiously avoiding eye contact with his own chairman. They sensed the subtle shift in barometric pressure that precedes a political hurricane. Gabbard waited for the manufactured noise to subside. Then, her eyes locked on the chairman. Mr. Chairman, may I respond to these accusations? The committee's ranking member, a man whose weary expression spoke of a career spent presiding over too many political circuses, nodded. The witness may respond, but please keep it brief. We have a full agenda today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gabbard's voice was steady, controlled, infused with the quiet authority of someone who had faced actual consequences. Mr. Schiff speaks of patriotism. I have served this country in uniform for over 2 decades. I deployed to war zones while Mr. Schiff was manufacturing evidence in the comfort of these committee rooms. A flash of crimson appeared on Schiff's cheeks. How dare you question my... I'm not finished. Gabbard interrupted, her tone still calm but now edged with steel. You speak of Russia and Assad. Another Russia hoax. Mr. Schiff, haven't we seen this movie before? With a deliberate motion, she reached down to her briefcase and retrieved a simple manila folder. On its cover, written in bold, black letters that were perfectly legible to the C-SPAN cameras, were 2 words that made Adam Schiff's blood run cold: Schiff's lies. Mr. Chairman, she continued, I came here today to discuss intelligence reforms. But since Mr. Schiff has chosen to make this personal, to attack my character and my service to this nation, I believe the American people deserve to know the truth about who has really been lying to them. Schiff shot to his feet so quickly that his chair toppled backward with a loud clatter. "This is outrageous. This is a setup. Mr. Chairman, I demand." "You'll have your chance to respond," the chairman said, his voice laced with annoyance at the escalating drama. "Representative Gabbard, please continue." Gabbard opened the folder slowly, deliberately, ensuring the first document was visible to the cameras. It was an official FBI report, its pages bleeding with the yellow of a highlighter pen. "Let's start with the FISA warrants, shall we?" "Point of order," Schiff shouted, but his voice cracked, betraying the panic that was now seizing him. His chief of staff was typing frantically on his phone. The CNN producer in the gallery looked utterly bewildered. This was not in the script. "There is no point of order," the chairman said firmly. "The witness is responding to accusations you made. Please sit down, Mr. Schiff." Schiff remained standing, his face now a pale mask of disbelief. "This is an ambush. This is an ambush." Gabbard's eyebrows rose, the first hint of emotion she had allowed herself. An interesting choice of words, coming from someone who pre-briefed CNN about today's bombshell takedown. "Yes, Mr. Schiff, we know about the media coordination. We have the emails." A wave of gasps rippled through the gallery. The furious clicking of keyboards from the press section was no longer for the story they had planned to write, but for the one that was now unfolding before them. The narrative was collapsing in real time, and Schiff could feel the ground giving way beneath him. What had begun as his orchestrated takedown had just become his own trial. "The witness may continue," the chairman said, his gaze shifting from Schiff's pathetic, sputtering form to Gabbard's composed figure. "But Mr. Schiff, I suggest you compose yourself. And someone, please, pick up that chair." As a staffer scurried to right the toppled chair, a symbol of Schiff's overturned authority, Gabbard pulled out the first of many documents that would, over the next several hours, systematically dismantle Adam Schiff's career. The cameras kept rolling, but the producers knew this footage was unusable for their intended narrative. This was the complete, unvarnished unraveling of one of Washington's most powerful politicians. And it was just beginning. "Let's begin with Carter Page," Gabbard said, her voice as clear and steady as a surgeon's scalpel. "An innocent American citizen whose life you helped destroy with lies. Mr. Schiff, you knew the FISA warrant was based on false information, didn't you?" Schiff opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. In that moment, he was no longer the hunter. He was the prey. "Let's talk about Carter Page. Mr. Schiff, an innocent American you helped destroy." Gabbard's words didn't just accuse, they indicted. She held up a crisp 8x10 photograph for the committee and the cameras to see. It showed a younger man in the pristine dress whites of the U.S. Navy, smiling with the earnest pride of someone who has just sworn an oath to his country. "This is Carter Page," she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum, "a graduate of the Naval Academy. A naval intelligence officer who served this country with honor. A patriot who, in fact, helped the CIA catch Russian spies. But you knew that, didn't you, Mr. Schiff? You knew he was one of the good guys." This was the crucial first analytical strike, establishing the victim not as a political operative, but as a patriot, making Schiff's subsequent actions a betrayal of the very country he claimed to serve. Schiff struggled to rise, his body refusing to obey his mind's frantic commands. "That's not." The FISA court found probable cause. "Did they?" Gabbard shot back, retrieving a document so thick it landed on the table with an authoritative thud. "This is the Inspector General's report on the matter. 434 pages. A detailed, forensic accounting of 17 major lies and omissions told to the FISA court. Not mistakes, Mr. Schiff. 17 distinct acts of deception. And as the ranking member of this committee, you knew about every single one." She flipped to a page marked with a red tab. "Let me read from the report. The FBI failed to inform the court that Page had been a CIA asset. You knew this, Mr. Schiff. You had access to the raw intelligence. This wasn't an oversight, it was a deliberate choice to withhold exculpatory evidence from a federal court." "Point of order," Schiff croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "There is no point of order." The chairman's voice snapped, his patience finally exhausted. "You opened this door, Mr. Schiff. You made these accusations. Now you will sit there and listen." Gabbard continued, her cadence like a drumbeat of judgment. But it gets worse, much worse. She produced another document, a printout of a series of text messages. These are texts between you and your senior staff, Mr. Schiff, acquired via a lawful subpoena. Would you like me to read them? Or would you prefer to admit what you did? Schiff's aide whispered urgently in his ear. But the congressman just waved him away, his hands trembling so violently he could no longer hold a pen. I'll read them, then, Gabbard said. March 15. Make sure the memo doesn't include the exculpatory evidence about Page. March 20. We need to keep the focus on Russia. Don't let anyone know about his CIA work. And my personal favorite, from April 2, if this gets out, we're finished. The gallery erupted. Reporters were now on their feet, phones held aloft, live streaming the political carnage. This was no longer a hearing, it was the public exposure of a conspiracy. Suddenly, a man in the back of the gallery stood up. He wore a simple gray suit and possessed the unmistakable bearing of a career law enforcement officer. My name is William Barnett, he announced, his voice shaking with what sounded like years of suppressed guilt. I was an FBI agent on the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. As security personnel moved toward him, Gabbard raised a hand. Let him speak. I was ordered to lie, Barnett confessed, his words stunning the room into silence. We knew Page was innocent. We knew the dossier was garbage paid for by the Clinton campaign. But we were told to push forward anyway. Get Trump. That was the only mission that mattered. Schiff shot to his feet, a renewed surge of adrenaline coursing through him. This is stage. This is all staged. That man is a whistleblower. Gabbard countered, her voice ringing with authority. A real one, Mr. Schiff, not the fake, coached operative you used for your Ukraine hoax. Agent Barnett came forward to the Department of Justice last month with documented, corroborated evidence of the conspiracy. The conspiracy you were a part of. She turned back to her folder, pulling out an email. This is from you to then FBI Director James Comey. Dated January 2017. Quote, we need to maintain the Russia narrative at all costs. Page's collateral damage. End quote. That's taken out of context. Schiff screamed. Is it? Then let's provide the context. Gabbard replied, producing the full email chain. Here is Director Comey's response. Understood. The objective justifies the means. And your reply, Mr. Schiff. History will vindicate us when Trump is gone. Representative Jim Jordan, who had been watching with a look of grim satisfaction, leaned into his microphone. Adam, we have the receipts. All of them. You didn't just lie. You weaponized the most powerful institutions of American government against a political opponent and an innocent citizen. Gabbard held up one last photograph. It showed Carter Page after his ordeal, haggard, broken, aged a decade in a few short years. This man lost everything, she said, her voice softening with empathy before hardening again as she turned her gaze back to Schiff. His reputation, his career, his life savings, all sacrificed so you could have a villain for your political hoax. 17 lies to a secret court to spy on an American. That's not oversight, Mr. Schiff. That's not politics. That is treason. The word, treason, hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. Several Democratic members of the committee, seeing the abyss opening before them, quietly gathered their papers and slipped out of the room. They wanted no part of what was to come. You said you never met the whistleblower, Gabbard stated, her voice returning to a calm, prosecutorial tone. Security footage, however, says otherwise. She reached into a new manila envelope, this one marked with the seal of the Capitol Police, and extracted several high-resolution still images. The political atmosphere in the room, already electric, began to arc and spark. This was a new front in the war, and Schiff was utterly unprepared. September 9, 2019, Gabbard began, holding up the first image for all to see. Your office schedule claimed you were in a constituent meeting, but this footage shows someone very different entering your office suite, doesn't it? The image, though from a security camera, was perfectly clear. A man, identifiable by his CIA lanyard, was being buzzed into Schiff's office. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. Schiff shot up again, his voice shrill with panic. That's classified. You can't show that. It is not classified. Gabbard corrected him calmly. Capitol Police security footage is the property of Congress. Mr. Schiff, you should know that. Or are you suggesting that evidence of your lies should be retroactively classified to protect you? She held up the next image. Here is the same man leaving your office. The timestamp is 4:23 p.m. An hour and 36 minutes. That is a very long meeting. Mr. Schiff, with someone you publicly claimed, under oath, you had never met and did not know. I meet with many intelligence officials. Schiff protested, grasping at straws. That doesn't mean. His name was Eric Chiaramella. Jim Jordan's voice boomed from across the dais, causing an audible gasp to sweep the room. You can't say that name. Schiff screamed, his face contorted in a mask of fury and fear. That's the whistleblower. You're endangering him. The fake whistleblower, Jordan retorted, completely unfazed. The one who coordinated with your staff for weeks before filing his complaint. The one who didn't even have first-hand knowledge of the phone call. The one you personally coached. Gabbard produced another document. This is the official visitor log from your office. Mr. Schiff. It shows Mr. Chiaramella visited your office suite 4 times in the 2 weeks immediately preceding the filing of his complaint. 4 times. What, exactly, were you discussing? The narrative was not just crumbling, it was being pulverized. The reporters in the gallery who had been fed the heroic tale of a brave whistleblower standing up to a corrupt president were now watching the entire story be exposed as a meticulously choreographed political hit. But it gets worse, Gabbard continued, pulling out a sheaf of emails. These are internal communications between your senior staff and Mr. Chiaramella. Would you like me to read them? Or would you prefer to finally tell the American people the truth? Just then, a man in an expensive suit burst through the committee room doors. My client needs a recess. This hearing must be suspended. Sit down, counselor, the chairman said, his voice dripping with disdain. Your client started this circus. He will sit here and see it to its conclusion. Gabbard began to read. August 24th, from your chief of staff to Chiaramella. We need something more dramatic than the call transcript itself. Can you expand on the narrative? August 28th, Chiaramella's response, I'm working on it. Should I mention the Biden pressure? Your staffer's reply, absolutely. Make it sound like a shakedown. Fabricated, Schiff shouted. Those are fabricated emails. Then you won't mind if we check the committee's official email servers. Matt Gaetz suggested with a predatory grin. I'm sure the House IT department keeps excellent backups. Schiff's face went slack. Of course there were backups. Gabbard was relentless. September 2nd, another email from your staff. CNN is ready to run with the story as soon as the complaint is filed. Jake Tapper is fully briefed. She looked up, her gaze sweeping over the gallery where several CNN personnel were suddenly trying to become invisible. This entire operation was a fraud from start to finish. You turned the intelligence oversight process into a political weapon, and you used the mainstream media as your accomplices. This was the core of the analysis, the perversion of institutions. It wasn't just Schiff, it was an entire ecosystem of power, congressional staff, intelligence operatives, and media partners working in concert to generate a crisis. Gabbard then laid out the most damning element, the lie itself. She pulled up a video of Schiff on the House floor, theatrically reading his parody version of the Trump-Ukraine call. A version where he completely fabricated dialogue to make the president sound like a mob boss. After playing the clip, she read from the actual declassified transcript. It's boring, diplomatic language bearing no resemblance to Schiff's performance. You didn't just misrepresent the call. Mr. Schiff, you knowingly and deliberately lied to the American people from the floor of the House of Representatives. She said, her voice cold and clear. You fabricated evidence in an official congressional proceeding. We have a word for that. Mr. Schiff. It's called fraud. She then produced the final piece of evidence in this section. Emails between Schiff's office and lawyers for Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company at the center of the controversy. You were actively coordinating with the very company Hunter Biden was being paid by. Gabbard stated, you weren't investigating corruption. Mr. Schiff. You were protecting it. For 3 years. Gabbard began, her voice resonating with the gravity of the charge. You told the American people, day after day, that you had seen direct, conclusive evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. My question, Mr. Schiff, is simple. Where is it? She reached into her folder and produced a thick, bound document that looked like a legal textbook. This is a compilation of your public statements on the matter. 247 television appearances. 312 tweets. 94 official statements from your office. All claiming you had seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. All of them were lies. She opened the volume. March 22, 2017. CNN. You told Wolf Blitzer, and I quote, "I can't go into the particulars. But there is more than circumstantial evidence. That was a lie, wasn't it, Mr. Schiff?" The congressman sat mute, a statue of impotent fury. "Let me refresh your memory of what was actually happening," Gabbard continued, pulling out another set of documents. "These are the declassified transcripts from your own committee's investigation. 53 witnesses testified behind closed doors. Let's review what they actually said." She began a devastating roll call, contrasting the sworn testimony of America's top intelligence officials with Schiff's public pronouncements. James Clapper, President Obama's Director of National Intelligence. Question. Did you see any evidence of collusion? Answer. No, sir. Yet you went on MSNBC that very night and told the nation the evidence was overwhelming. Susan Rice, National Security Advisor. No evidence. Loretta Lynch, Attorney General. No evidence. Sally Yates, Deputy Attorney General. No evidence. This was the analytical core of the attack, a direct, undeniable contrast between the secret truth and the public lie. It exposed the Russia narrative not as a legitimate investigation, but as a deliberate propaganda campaign. Those transcripts were classified. Schiff finally managed to croak. Jim Jordan interjected. They were declassified last year. You fought to keep them hidden, didn't you, Adam? Because you knew they proved you were lying to the American people from the very beginning. Gabbard then brought out the two official reports that had bookended the investigation. The Mueller report, she announced, holding it up, $40 million, 22 months. Conclusion. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. No collusion, Mr. Schiff. She then held up the Durham report. Special counsel Durham found that senior officials knew by early 2017 that the collusion narrative was baseless, but continued the investigation for political purposes. You were one of those senior officials, weren't you? Then came the motive. Why, Mr. Schiff? Why perpetrate such a massive fraud on the American people? Before Schiff could answer, a man in a rumpled suit stood up in the gallery. Because he was getting paid, he shouted. My name is William McGonigal. I'm a retired FBI analyst. Schiff's campaign took money from the same sources that were funding the fake dossier. He had a financial interest in keeping the hoax alive. As Schiff screamed denials, Gabbard calmly produced Federal Election Commission records and a large graph. Here we see Representative Schiff's campaign donations. And here we see his major cable news appearances pushing the collusion narrative. Notice a pattern? Every major TV appearance was followed within days by a significant spike in donations from entities connected to Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie. You weren't just lying, Mr. Schiff. You were monetizing that lie. But the final, irrefutable proof was yet to come. Gabbard produced a small audio recorder. This is from a hot mic moment at a CNN town hall in December 2019. You thought the cameras were off, Mr. Schiff. She pressed play. Schiff's voice, unmistakable and crystal clear, filled the silent room. Look, we all know it's bull's tea. But it's too late to back out now. The base demands red meat. And I'm the chef. An audible, collective gasp swept the room. It was the sound of a career ending. Even the most hardened political operatives on the Democratic side looked stunned. The cynicism was too raw, too naked. You knew, Gabbard said simply, her voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. You knew it was all a lie. She held up one last document from the Russia section. This is a memo from Christopher Steele, the author of the fake dossier. To your office. It reads, the sourcing is thin and mostly hearsay. But it serves its purpose. Your handwritten response in the margin, it doesn't need to be true. It needs to be believed. She let the words hang in the air. 3 years of lies. 3 years of dividing our country. 3 years of using your position on this powerful committee to perpetrate the single greatest fraud in modern American political history. You weren't investigating a crime. Mr. Schiff, you were the one committing it. But the public lies were just a symptom of a much deeper private rot. Gabbard continued, seamlessly transitioning from Schiff's political sins to his personal corruption. The temperature in the room, already frigid for Schiff, dropped even further. Let's discuss your friend, Mr. Schiff. Let's discuss Ed Buck. The name landed like a grenade. Ed Buck, the Democratic mega-donor. The political power player. The convicted predator whose West Hollywood apartment had become a house of horrors where he drugged and abused young men. 2 of whom died. Schiff's face, which had been pale, turned a ghastly, unhealthy gray. That has nothing to do with this committee's business. He stammered. Doesn't it? Gabbard countered, holding up a photograph. This is you, Mr. Schiff, smiling at a private fundraiser in Ed Buck's home in July 2017. 1 month before Gemma Moore died of a methamphetamine overdose on a mattress in that very house. She produced a stack of emails. These are from activists and victims' families in your own district, begging you, pleading with you, to condemn Buck and return his donations. They warned you he was dangerous. They told you young black men were being hurt. And what was your response? She held up a campaign finance report. You took another $2.700 contribution from him 2 weeks later. 2 young men are dead. Mr. Schiff. And you kept taking his blood money because he was a valuable source of funding for your political machine. This was no longer about abstract political lies. It was a visceral accusation of moral depravity. Gabbard was connecting Schiff's willingness to deceive the nation with a willingness to ignore the suffering of the most vulnerable for personal gain. But Ed Buck was just one part of a disturbing donor network. She went on, opening a new section of documents. Let's talk about your connections to foreign entities. She held up a photo of Schiff at an exclusive dinner party, beaming alongside a man whose face sent murmurs through the intelligence-savvy members of the committee. Zhang Wei-chen, Gabbard announced, arrested last year for acting as an unregistered agent of the People's Republic of China. But before his arrest, he was a prolific donor to your campaigns through various opaque political action committees. The man who spent years accusing his political opponents of being foreign agents was himself taking money from one. She then produced a classified counterintelligence briefing. This document details foreign attempts to influence members of Congress. Your name appears 17 times. Mr. Schiff. 17. Jim Jordan could not contain himself. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. And where did you conduct these sensitive meetings, Mr. Schiff? Gabb's voice was low and menacing. Let's discuss the Standard Hotel. Schiff shot up so violently his chair toppled backward for the second time. No, you can't. What happened at the Standard Hotel? Gabbard pressed. Hotel records show 47 visits between 2016 and 2018. Always paid for in cash. Always booked under an alias. What were you so desperate to hide? Before she could answer her own question, a distinguished-looking older man in the gallery stood up, a Medal of Honor pin gleaming on his lapel. I'll tell you what he was hiding, the veteran declared, his voice shaking with rage. He was meeting with people who were planning to undermine a duly elected president. I know because I was asked to participate. And I refused. As security moved toward the man, he pointed a finger at Schiff. You called her a traitor. He yelled, gesturing toward Gabbard. You're the traitor, Schiff. You and your deep state friends. After the man was escorted out, Gabbard laid out her final indictment of Schiff's character. She unrolled a massive timeline covering 2 decades of his career, a litany of ethics complaints, campaign finance violations, intelligence leaks, and suspicious financial transactions. She presented his financial disclosures, showing his net worth ballooning from $170 to over $30 million while on a congressional salary. She highlighted a massive government contract awarded to a company just 2 weeks after Schiff pushed for specific legislation. A company where his wife just happened to be a consultant. This is the swamp creature in its natural habitat, Matt Gaetz muttered into his microphone. But here is what truly matters, Gabbard said, her voice becoming somber as she held up a collage of faces. Carter Page, General Michael Flynn, Roger Stone, George Papadopoulos. While you were getting rich and playing your political games, the lives of real people were destroyed by your lies. But the biggest victim, she concluded, was the country itself. You divided us. You made Americans hate each other. You convinced half the nation that their neighbors were traitors. All for power, money, and fame. Mr. Schiff, was it worth it? Was destroying America worth your 30 pieces of silver? Adam Schiff sat frozen in the ruins of his career. His staff had vanished. His lawyer was packing his briefcase. The entire political world, which had once revered and feared him, was now watching his televised execution. The air was thick with the sense of a final, brutal judgment. Mr. Chairman, Gabbard said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. I would like to present one final piece of evidence. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This document was found in Mr. Schiff's office printer this morning by a member of the maintenance staff. It is dated yesterday. She held it up for the cameras. It was a letter, formally addressed to the Speaker of the House. It was a letter of resignation. He knew this was coming. Gabbard stated, not with triumph, but with a cold, analytical finality. He prepared his exit strategy before he even launched his attack on me this morning. This spectacle wasn't an act of confidence, Mr. Chairman. It was an act of desperation. One last, desperate attempt to destroy a political enemy before his own destruction became public. Schiff's head snapped up, a spark of his old arrogance returning. That's private property. You can't. Your resignation letter, left in a public printer in a United States government building, is now evidence. Gabbard corrected him. Evidence of your guilty conscience. The chairman, his face a mask of grim duty, cleared his throat. Mr. Schiff, given the circumstances, would you like to submit that resignation to this committee now? It might be the wisest course of action. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of defiance returned. I'm not resigning, Schiff hissed. This is a witch hunt. I move to censure Representative Adam Schiff for conduct unbecoming a member of Congress. The voice did not come from the Republican side. It came from his own party. Representative Jackie Speer, who had sat in stoic silence throughout the hearing, was now on her feet, her expression one of profound disappointment. The silence that followed was the sound of the ultimate betrayal. A Democrat, a fellow Californian, was moving to formally condemn him. Then another Democratic voice called out. Seconded. Then a third. And a fourth. Within moments, it was clear that his own party was not just abandoning him, they were throwing him overboard to save themselves. All in favor of the motion to censure. The chairman called out. Every hand in the room went up. Republicans, Democrats, allies, and enemies. It was unanimous. The political calculus was brutal and swift. Adam Schiff was now too toxic to defend. The motion passes. The chairman announced. Representative Schiff, you are hereby censured by this committee. That won't be necessary. The voice from the back of the room commanded instant authority. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi had entered, flanked by her leadership team. Her face, usually a carefully composed mask, looked as if it had aged a decade in the last hour. She didn't look at the committee, she looked only at Schiff. Adam, she said, foregoing his title. It's over. She gestured toward the glass doors of the hearing room, where two uniformed Capitol police officers could now be seen waiting patiently. Security is waiting for you. They have questions about your activities. This was the final, shocking escalation. It had moved beyond political censure and into the realm of criminal investigation. Nancy, you can't let them, Schiff pleaded, his voice cracking. I can't do anything for you. Pelosi cut him off, her voice devoid of sympathy. You lied to me, too, Adam. You told me you had the evidence. You told all of us you were protecting the country. You used us. She then turned her gaze to Gabbard, and for a brief moment, a look of grudging respect crossed her face. You've made your point, Congresswoman. This was never about me. Madam Speaker, Gabbard replied, her military bearing unyielding. It's about the truth. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring this never, ever happens again. As the Capitol police officers entered the room, Schiff, cornered and defeated, made one last, desperate gambit. Wait, I have information about others. I can help you. Mr. Schiff, one of the officers said, his voice polite but firm. We need you to come with us. You are not under arrest at this time. But we have been asked by the Department of Justice to ask you some questions regarding the evidence presented today. The walk of shame that followed was a historic moment, captured by every camera. Adam Schiff, the Grand Inquisitor, The man who had styled himself as the nation's chief prosecutor was led out of his own committee room in disgrace. His shoulders slumped, his pomposity shattered. He was no longer a power player. He was just a subject in a federal investigation. The moment the doors closed behind Adam Schiff, the carefully maintained decorum of the committee room disintegrated. Reporters bolted for the exits, racing to be the first to break the news of the political earthquake. Members huddled in frantic, whispered conversations, their faces a mixture of shock, glee, and terror. In the halls of Congress, a new currency was being traded: fear. Shredders in offices across Capitol Hill began to whir. Matt Gaetz was already in front of a news camera, delivering the first of many political epitaphs. What we witnessed today was the complete unmasking of one of the most corrupt politicians in modern American history, he declared. Justice has finally come to the swamp. Jim Jordan was holding court with another group of reporters. This is just the beginning, he promised. A full criminal referral to the DOJ is being drafted as we speak. This goes far beyond censure. But Tulsi Gabbard avoided the media circus. She calmly and methodically packed her documents. Each piece of evidence returned to its proper folder. The mission was accomplished. As she was leaving, a young reporter managed to intercept her. "Congresswoman, how does it feel to have completely destroyed Adam Schiff's career?" Gabbard paused, her expression thoughtful. "I didn't destroy Adam Schiff," she corrected. "He destroyed himself with his own lies and corruption. I just made sure the American people were able to see it happen." As she walked through the marbled corridors of the Capitol, something remarkable occurred. Staff members, security guards, custodial workers, and even some members of Congress from both parties began to applaud. It wasn't the stage, partisan applause Schiff had arranged for himself hours earlier. It was a spontaneous, genuine expression of respect for someone who had done the impossible. She had held the untouchable accountable. Outside, the physical manifestations of the power shift were already underway. A maintenance truck was parked at a side entrance, and workers were carefully loading a large, framed object into the back. It was Adam Schiff's official portrait, being removed from the wall of the Intelligence Committee hallway. "That was fast," her aide remarked. "The truth usually is, once it's finally allowed to see the light of day," Gabbard replied. Across Washington, the shockwaves were spreading. In law firms and lobbying shops, emergency calls were being made. On social media, the hashtag Schiff is done was trending globally. And somewhere in Mar-a-Lago, a former president was likely watching the news with a profound sense of vindication. Within minutes, a post appeared on Truth Social: "Witch hunt exposed. Shifty Schiff finally caught. So many others to go. Make America great again." As Gabbard stepped out into the bright Washington sunshine, she patted the briefcase at her side. Inside were more folders, more evidence, more names. The takedown of Adam Schiff wasn't an end. It was a beginning. His Wikipedia page had already been updated by an anonymous editor. Adam Bennett Schiff is an American politician and former U.S. representative, censured by Congress for a pattern of corruption and abuse of power. A new line had been added at the bottom. On October 15, 2025, Schiff became the subject of a federal criminal investigation. The reckoning had arrived. The deep state's favorite congressman had fallen, and in smoke-filled back rooms and luxurious offices all over the city, the creatures of the swamp were asking themselves a terrifying new question: am I next? If Tulsi Gabbard had anything to say about it, the answer was yes. Justice, so long delayed, had finally arrived, and it was exactly as brutal and as cleansing as it needed to be.